I am sick to the teeth of discussing the Real Housewives of Potomac. And yet here I am discussing the Real Housewives of Potomac. Free Bobrisky. Free Bobrisky. Lagos is missing their mummy. Free her. I really do believe that the handling of Stephen Lawrence's case was a watershed moment in racial politics in the UK. Hello, hi, good morning, and good afternoon, or good evening. But welcome back to It's That Deep, the podcast. I'm your host. My name is Faye Shara, and this is a podcast, as per the title, where everything is that deep. We unpack some of the week's bigger stories in news, in politics, in pop culture, in telly, in music, in all of the above. We do that here. So thank you so much for joining me for episode number 19. We are almost at 20 episodes. Crazy. Absolute madness. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope everything is good on your end, whether you're on the other end of like earphones or you're watching me on the screen. I hope you're good. I hope you are ready to gist with me and talk about some of the happenings of the previous week. Do I have any announcements, housekeeping thing? Oh my gosh, I do. We started an Instagram. Finally. I got over the fear of social media and I opened an Instagram for It's That Deep, the podcast. I will put it in the show notes and in the YouTube description. But I just thought, you know what? It's time. I do not enjoy Instagram so much per se. I don't really enjoy posting to my personal one. I do it anyway because I know I have to, but that doesn't mean I like it. So I was like, let me just go ahead and start another Instagram for this page dedicated to news, dedicated to everything that's going on. I hopefully, by the grace of God, will be far more active on there in terms of like stories and actually talking about stuff as it happens, live in real time. But yeah, go ahead and give us a follow. Don't be shy. Why would you be shy? Just follow, you know what I mean? Just follow us. But yeah, that is, I think, it. And I think we should get into our honourable picks. Okay, so honourable pick number 1, and I can't lie guys, I might just speed through this one because I am sick to the teeth of discussing the Real Housewives of Potomac. And yet here I am discussing the Real Housewives of Potomac. However, for me and my sanity as a person, I just need to tie up some loose ends. I've given my 2 pence, or even 6 or 7 pence at this point, on my thoughts on this season, particularly on TikTok. However, I just thought, for the sake of my sanity, let me tie it up on the pod and then be done with it. So they finished, thank the Lord, season 8 of Potomac last week. It's been a long season, guys. Oh my God, it's been a long season. I mean, like from start to finish, it has been a ball of crap. Like, take your pick, from colorism conversations to witchcraft allegations, you know, to bullying, infidelity, like just... And I know that's what reality TV is about, but just endless. It wasn't fun. Like, this season was not fun. Real Housewives should be fun. And so I'm very glad it has come to an end. And I said, let me just give my 2 points and let's be on our merry way about what happened. So actually, for context, for people who don't know, the Real Housewives of Potomac is obviously one of the cities of the Bravo franchise, the Real Housewives. They have shows in Atlanta. Where else do they have? Salt Lake City, Orange County, Beverly Hills, prominent cities in the US and now globally as well. And Potomac is a bit of a later addition to the franchise. Not only is it a later addition, it's also the second primarily Black cast, which is of significance because Atlanta, the first primary Black cast, just came out and killed it. I mean, this is back in like the 2010s, killed it. Like, as a staple of pop culture, Atlanta was that girl. However, in the last like 5 years or so, I want to say the pendulum has swung the other way. And actually, where Atlanta was like the OG and it was really repping Black society in America, Potomac has sort of come for its neck a little bit, and Potomac was very slowly becoming that girl, you know, fun shade, enjoyable to watch. However, the last few seasons have not been enjoyable to watch, and that is primarily because of the fact that we are seeing is really weird, but like we're seeing real life play out in reality TV. And I made a TikTok about this, and that's why it's becoming an enjoyable watch. However, let me just get my 2 points and let's be going on our way, because it showed me some things. So the first thing it showed me is that every ism, that word ism, ISM, is upheld by systems in society. And I feel like people know that in general, but it's actually interesting to see it play out in the reverse. So on a micro level, what do I mean by that? So obviously Potomac is not even primarily 100% black cast. Obviously Atlanta was too, but Atlanta's different in that for the most part they were all dark-skinned black women, whereas Potomac has a real mixture. So they have dark-skinned black women, they have light-skinned black women, and they have, white passing black women, to be very honest with you. I looked at some of them before I watched the show. I was like, is this a white woman or is this a black woman? But they have a real mixture, and so naturally the complexities of colorism have come up a lot more on Potomac as opposed to Atlanta. With that being said, it's now been, like, we all knew it, but it's actually been a point of conversation that the women themselves have had on the show. This colorism issue has primarily come to the forefront because in a really weird way, a lot of the conflict has become light skin versus dark skin. And that's not at the forefront of the conflict. The conflict can be about anything else, but it just naturally happens that the line falls between the light skin women and the dark skin women. And a lot of people have been speculating that production in particular have protected the lighter skinned women, and so where there's conflict and there's been a call for accountability on both sides, actually we only get it from the darker skinned women because production favor the lighter skinned women. And some may say I'm way too invested, and I'm just gonna hold my hand up here. I am way too invested in reality TV, but I think it's interesting to see what happens in society play out on this smaller scale, if that makes sense. So like the call for accountability really should actually swing the way of the light-skinned women, because they are the committers, if committers is a word, of the atrocities that we see happen on the show. But there is a system and a structure in place, aka production, to protect them so that they never get called out, or they never are held to account, or their feet are never held to the fire in the way the darker skinned women are. And you have to watch the show to kind of get what I'm referencing, but it's small things like loss of footage that would lead to accountability, or the way the show is edited that would present them in a certain light as opposed to the darker skinned black women. And so what is being reiterated to me, and what was reiterated to me as I watched the whole season, was that colorism or racism or any ism cannot flourish or function in the absence of a structure to support it. Second point, and one that is probably more specific to this actual show, is that, I mean, for me, the question all season that was raised was like, where is the duty of care? I think this is really important because I appreciate, like I said, I also work in TV, so I appreciate entertainment and the need for entertainment value, but I also wonder to what point, or first of all to what end, and at what point does something that could have been entertainment turn a bit too sinister, and we actually have to put the entertainment on the back burner and say, okay, families are at stake here, like let's just take a chill pill. The reason I say that is two of the most prominent storyline this season was unfortunately between two Nigerian castmates, one who's been here for a few seasons and one who's a newbie. And the newbie, oh my god, she opened her long mouth to come and tell America that the fellow Nigerian's mother is a witch. Now, for my Nigerians, for my Africans, we know the connotations of such an assertion. We know what could happen to that lady if she decides to go back to Nigeria now, and someone in Nigeria decided to watch Bravo and now in their mind somehow thinks that this lady is a witch. Like, we know the repercussions of that kind of statement. And at no point in the season was there an attempt to like not only mend fences, but to really like retract the statement basically. And I just thought to myself, like, this is not fun. Maybe I have a deep emotional attachment because I am Nigerian and I'm watching two Nigerian sisters go at it, but like, this is not fun. Because once the cameras go down, if Wendy was the accused, if her mum goes back to Nigeria now, her life is on the line. I'll give you another example. Candice, for me, I consider to be the star of the show, was trying to have a baby all season. But the finale episode of the season, there's a physical altercation where she is attacked. If by some, miracle she is actually pregnant now, but if she was pregnant at that point and somebody who actually is not a cast member but was really trying to get their 5 minutes of fame approached her and attacked her, we don't know what the consequences would have been had she been pregnant at that time. But the whole reunion, they gaslit her and they told her that she was responsible for the attack upon her because of her mouth. Like, at what point do we say, okay, entertainment, let's dash it to the side for a moment. We have a responsibility, I'm talking about Bravo now, have a responsibility as employers to protect their cast members, and not only their cast members, their staff also, because there's, stories back from season 4 of this show where one of the husbands was grabbing people's bums. Like, at what point do we say, okay, this is great for a storyline, but actually these are real life people and they need to be protected by us, their employers? Because any other employer in any other industry would look for be concerned about the safety of their staff members. And Bravo has a history of not protecting its staff and its talent. Like, over on Married to Medicine, Mariah Huck, I remember when she suffered her miscarriage, there was no real duty of care there. There wasn't a conversation about that. They allowed her to be like iced out by a group of women who she brought together because that was her show. Nene Leakes, the star of Atlanta, has spoken about this to no end. And I think Bravo have to remember that, like, yes, they are TV producers. Yes, their job is to create entertainment, but they are also employers. And so they have that duality where they have to do both and hold the standards of both. And it feels like they've pursued entertainment so much that they have forgotten that they need to protect their employees. So yeah, that's my final 8 and 9 pence on the Real Housewives of Potomac. It was a lackluster season. It was dreadful. I never want to see it happen again. They need a major cast shake up. However, that is not going to stop me from not watching the show. I am done. I think I'm done with reality TV in general. I may be, who knows. But yeah, like I said, Potomac was becoming that girl, and it's hurting me and my homegirls that it's taken this fall from grace. So honorable pick number 2, and we are going to talk about Bobrisky. First things first is free Bobrisky. Lagos is missing their mummy. Free her. So context for those of you who don't know, Bobrisky this week was put away for 6 months in, I don't know if it's federal prison, but he was put in prison for 6 months in Nigeria, and he was charged for abusing the naira. That's the crime. So abusing the naira basically means fun fact, I found this out today, that it's illegal to spray money in Nigeria because it's seen to like devalue the naira, particularly when you're like at parties or whatnot and people step on it. Apparently it's like a faux pas, it's a no. However, I feel like everybody in the world knows that Nigerians are very, like, that's a Nigerian thing. Like, you go to weddings, you go to parties, you go to celebrations and you spray money because it's a sign of celebration, it's a sign of respect, and it's a way of people indicating their status. But I was today years old when I found out that there is a law about that. So Bobrisky was at a movie premiere, and I think his friend made the film, and I've actually misgendered. Very awkward. I've misgendered Bobrisky. Because she presents as female, she was at a film premiere and she started spraying the filmmaker, and basically the video started circulating of her just spraying, and they took that as evidence to say she's abusing the naira. Bear in mind, in that video and in the other videos that they're using for evidence, there are other people in that same room spraying money, but it's just Bobrisky that they've come and collect, arrest, and now put away for 6 months. And I just think, I guess the irony, because my next question was is it that deep? Like I said, the world knows that this is what Nigerians do. Everyone knows it. It is part of our culture. it's so widely done, like not only in Nigeria, in the Nigerian diaspora, all over the world. Like it's, everyone knows that Nigerians spray money. And so first of all, I guess there's that tension between like the legal and the cultural, because who outlawed what is a cultural practice? Like there's cultural practices that we all know should be outlawed, like FGM, for example, but this is a cultural practice that does not hurt anybody. And so who was it that decided we're going to now enforce the law on this particular cultural practice? I find that interesting. I also find it interesting that, like I said, it's only Bobrisky that has been targeted in this ploy, this scheme that Todd set up. Do you know what I mean? Like, why just Bobrisky? And I do feel like this is a very thinly veiled way of them. It's like a gotcha moment. I don't think the right word is scapegoat. Like I don't think he's being scapegoated, but I do think this is like a disguise they're using to arrest him for what they really want to arrest him for, which is the fact that I just did it again, but she presents as a woman, as a trans woman in a culture that is very anti-LGBT. I think that's what they really want to arrest her for. But maybe they don't have the balls to do it. Maybe they know that because she's such, like, she has like 5 million followers on Instagram. She's such a global, okay, not global, relax. But she has global reach, basically. And so they know that the outcry from arresting her off of that basis will be far more than arresting her because she sprayed a few dollars. But I think that's a bit icky, man. I feel like if you're going to do it with your chest. Arrest her with your chest. We already know, like, Africa's track record in history with the LGBTQ plus community. Like Ghana just outlawed it outright the other day, like, and I think it is illegal in Nigeria. So why, if it's the law, it's the law. Do you know what I mean? Arrest her on that basis. But like trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and tell them, oh, it is this and it's not that, like, no, we're not dumb. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I just feel like it's quite unfair. And even the circumstances surrounding her now imprisonment, like she's reportedly been moved to like a maximum security prison. I'm talking like where people are having life sentences, people are on death row. Do you have death row in Nigeria? I should fact check that. But like people, murderers, she's been moved to that prison, which is extra sinister because again, she did not do anything worth a life sentence. Whether she did, whether she didn't, I guess that's up for debate. I don't see spraying money as a big issue, and I don't think most Nigerians would. But not only that, like I said, she presents as a woman, and so to put her in a maximum security prison and they've put her on the men's wing, that's just going to cause trouble. Like they've literally put her in the line of fire and put her in the line of danger. And I just feel like, for what? To make an example out of her, but you're not even prosecuting her for the thing you want to make an example out of. Like, I think that's it's a bit backhanded, man. Like, just do it anyway. Sure, let me not comment. But just do it with clarity and just draw the line and just be very clear that this is the issue and this is what we're arresting her for, as opposed to like playing dumb and like playing on the ignorance of Nigerians or the whatever of Nigeria. Like, it's just weird. So yeah, free Bobrisky, basically. There is another conversation in here about Africa's, like I said, history with LGBTQ plus people, but that could take a whole other episode. And I don't know that I have the minerals and the range to discuss that. I'm going to be honest. Maybe one day we'll do a sit down with someone from that community. Maybe. Here we go. Giving you guys an idea here. Stay tuned. Okay, so this week's main story, and it's not actually news per se, it's more so of a history lesson. So buckle up, join me for a quick history lesson, because this week marks the 31st anniversary of the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Now, for those who don't know, again, you know, Stephen Lawrence, man, incredibly sad story. One of the most prolific, I'll say, cases of racial violence in this country, like garnered global attention still to this day. So Stephen Lawrence was an 18-year-old living in, I always get this wrong, it was South London. I want to say Eltham. And he, I think like after school one day, I think he was at like a ping pong thing with his friend Dwayne Brooks, and they basically were like on the way home. They missed their original bus, so they were waiting at the bus stop for the next bus. And it was when they were waiting at the bus stop that they were launched upon and attacked by a group of 5 or 6 white men. And Dwayne managed to get away, but Stephen was stabbed a few times and died before he reached the hospital. I want to say his murder wasn't an anomaly in the sense that that area of London at that time was notorious for racist attacks and racist murders to that extent. Like, you know, Stephen died in 93, or so he was murdered in 1993. He was not the first person to be murdered in a racist attack, and he was not the last. So his murder wasn't an anomaly in that way, but what was an anomaly was the handling of his case and the aftermath of everything that followed. I really do believe that the handling of Stephen Lawrence's case was a watershed moment in racial politics in the UK, and it really exposed, you know, the tension between the black community and the police, but also the incompetence of the police in how they handle cases involving black people. You know, there's stories about how the officer in charge of the crime scene went to the crime scene the day after he was murdered, and then stopped on the way for a drink at the pub. There's stories about how, and this is quite well known, is that 48 hours after Stephen Lawrence was murdered, people were calling the police station, leaving letters, dropping stuff on police windshields saying, we know who the murderers are, we can identify them, we know them. And the police did nothing, and they sat on that information for 2 weeks. It was only 2 weeks after the murder that arrests were made. Do you know what you can do in 2 weeks? Do you know how many times you can wash the bloodstains out of your clothes? Do you know how many times you can wipe down and even get rid of the fatal weapon? Like, 2 weeks is a long time to be sitting on that information. And so in general, there was just not even mishandling. It was very deliberate and, just lackadaisical, just very nonchalant handling of the murder of a young black boy. I wanted to make this the main story for this week because I really question, like, what is it that has 31 years on, what has changed? Because it was Stephen's death that triggered the Macpherson report, and the Macpherson report was an inquiry into the Met Police, and it concluded that the Met Police is institutionally racist. However, we're 31 years on, and I'm pretty sure they commissioned a report last year that told us the exact same thing. It just added homophobic and misogynistic onto it as well. Like, they commission these reports every year to tell us the same thing. Why has nothing changed? Back then, when Stephen was murdered, it was only until they garnered the support of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela came to this UK. It took Nelson Mandela coming to the UK to support Doreen Lawrence, and I've forgotten his father's name. It took him coming for them to make the arrest the next day. And even in that, it took 19 years for only 2 of his murderers to be convicted. 19 years they lived free. There was an article that came out last year about how the 5 suspects who for the 31 years we thought murdered Stephen, so the Acorn brothers, Gary Dobson, Neil Knight, and a 5th person, we thought those were the murderers. But there was an article that came out last year about how there was a 6th person, and witnesses and the police have confirmed that he was present at the time, but they only released that article after this person has passed on. Like, just in general, it's angering me even all over again, because you just look at it and it's like, there's such a lack of regard for black life amongst the Met Police. There is such indifference. If it's not Stephen Lawrence, it's strip searching young black girls in schools without parental, consent or adult supervision. If it's not that, and I've said I believe in stop searches, but it's bogus stop searches with no founding, just as a way to intimidate young black boys. Like, there is such an indifference to black life. There's no care. And I just like, I'll do my research and I read up about this stuff, and I watch like the videos of Doreen Lawrence and just the pain behind her eyes. And it's like, why? You guys are supposed to bring justice, but you're subverting it and you're doing everything in your power to stop the course of justice taking place. And it's just painful. And it's most frustrating because 31 years on, can we say much has changed? Can we really look at the Met and be like, oh, do you know what? There's been some improvements. I'm not to be radical, but I don't think we can say that. And I think, controversial take, but I do think we put the onus far too much on the Black community to say, hey, you know what? You need to change how you view the police, and you need to, you know, not be so radical, and you need to just give them a chance. Not everyone's a bad apple. Whereas the onus is never really on the Met Police to change how they think about the Black community and to police with a lighter hand when it comes to the Black community. The onus is always on us and never on them, but they are the ones in power. If we're talking like dynamic wise, they are the ones in power. They are the ones who have the power to affect change. So why point the finger at the Black community? I do believe we have some changes to make. Absolutely. I do believe there's some rhetorics that we need to revise and not pass on to the next generation. But we can do all of that and there be no change on the other end. And so it's like all of the work that we do is futile. Like, without being dramatic, it sort of makes me think, well, what was he murdered for? Like I said, if this is supposed to be a watershed moment in racial politics, there needs to have been some change. And I don't feel that there has been any. I just think they've been better at masquerading their indifference to Black life. Like, yeah, 31 years on, 31 is a long time. It's 3 decades. And that family still don't know who murdered their son. They still, I mean, those people who have been accused of pissed off to Spain and like are living in Spain and even being arrested there, and they've had justice executed for the pettiest of crimes. What? The pettiest of crimes, robbery, breaking and entering. 2 of them have been arrested and been to prison in this United Kingdom for petty crimes. But the murder of a young Black man, silence. It's ridiculous. I don't necessarily know what the point of this main story was, but I think it's cause for reflection. And just cause to think like, well, what do we do to change if 31 years on, nothing has even remotely changed? In my eyes, let me know if you guys think it's changed. I don't know. Obviously, I was not alive at that time, so I can't speak to what it was. But, you know, I like history, like I said, and I've read the history, and I don't think much has changed. So it's cause for reflection. What do we do? What is the next step? Are we just going to get another report commissioned this year that tells us that the Met Police are racist? We don't need to know that. The water is wet, the sky is blue. Thank you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a bit, it's painful. Like, my heart does break for that family, you know. Yeah, it does. This is one of the main stories where I'm like, oh, I don't actually know how to round off because it's still quite open-ended. And I don't have a conclusion because I am angry and frustrated and incensed. And so if I don't have a conclusion, maybe you guys have one. So maybe let me know what your conclusion is and what your thoughts are, and how, if at all, like the anniversary of Stephen Lawrence's death means anything to you or stirs anything up in you, because it most definitely does for me. Most definitely does. Again, even though I wasn't alive at the time. So yeah, thank you for joining me on this episode. This episode felt like a bit of a wild ride in some respects. We started off in the world of reality TV, moved over to Nigeria. Very Black this episode, actually, which I'm never mad at. But anyway, again, follow us on Instagram. The handle is itsthatdeep.pod. Somebody stole the handle that has no dot, so I had to put a dot in there. But follow us on Instagram, and follow me, connect with me, chat with me, and I will see you next week for episode number 20. Wow, praise be to God. Praise be. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Take care.